Hi, in this video we're going to take a look at how to use code logic to examine an application and see if it might be appropriate to break down into fewer services. Now, the application we have in front of us is called ThingsBoard. It is an open source IoT application. And when I want to get started, what I'll typically do is throw this into what's known as the hierarchical layout. What that'll do typically is put your code content up towards the top, your data elements down to the bottom, and show you how things fit. I'm going to expect most of this stuff across the top to be Java, and much of what's going on down below to be columns and such. Now, what I'm looking for when I'm looking to see if things might be able to be cut into microservices is for there to be significant decoupling at a data layer. If a whole bunch of classes from all over the application are talking to the same columns, it's going to be more difficult to unwind than if we've got the beginnings of kind of a domain approach, which will look more vertical. So in general, where I see these vertical piles, that looks really promising. And where I see a lot of these diagonal lines happening, I'm a little more concerned. So with that, what we want to start doing is understanding a lot of these diagonal lines that imply coupling and see if they're fundamental to the application or something we can manage. Now the first set is coming from the top. That is, I believe, the jar file that all the Java is connected to. And because we could repackage our Java into different libraries, if that's the problem, which we would see with the Java executable, flip that off and we can drop that. And that looks like that's what was going on. The next thing I am concerned by are these diagonal green lines. And when we look at what they're connected to, come in on one of these. What we're seeing is we've got Spring Framework items, and the type is placeholder. That probably is okay. So if there's just a bunch of connections into the Spring Framework, that's something we could duplicate across multiple services without likely causing a whole lot of problems. So what I'm going to do is just come in here and filter, and I'm going to go ahead and look for this D type and see if it's placeholders. And now all I have down here is placeholders, and I can just skim this real quick and see what kind of placeholders we have. We've got some util classes, and then we have Spring Framework is what I'm seeing as I scroll down here pretty quickly. Some Hibernate annotations. I think that we can probably ignore the placeholders. And I would probably spend a little more time than that to do this properly. But now let's see what we've got. Okay, now this is starting to take shape. One of the things I notice pretty quickly is that the blue seems to be almost all over here. There's a little bit over here that we're going to need to deal with and maybe unwind. But the blue is over here, and it looks like there's a lot of the brown over here too. And if I'm looking at that, this looks like a references column. We can just toggle that to see if that's true. Yep. And then referencing the table. Okay. And then contains column, so which tables contain which edges. Okay. So all of our columns, except for a couple over here, are piled on kind of the right-hand side of this visualization. That's really interesting to me, because that suggests that we've got a data access element here, and then other stuff over on the right, except for a handful of columns. So what I might do is just kind of look in here, select some things, and then filter that down to column. And kind of see which of these we've got here that are of this column type. Cool. All right, we've got some user entities, a little bit of search, passwords, a couple of names. Okay. So if I'm looking over here, we've got these guys. I mean, it looks like we might have authentication is over here by itself. And then the rest of the data, if I come over here, is a little bit different. All right. The other way I might go about this is to look and try and figure out what's going on in Java land over here, far away from the data, right? So I might just grab a section like this and then just look at the class entities and see what we've got. Looks like we've got user management, some time series. So this looks like reporting, more time, more reporting. Some user information and tenant information, so that might be bound into that same authentication. And then just kind of skimming through here. What else do we see that might be interesting? Okay, some kind of, we have some time series and some reporting. What else do we have as we look a little further over to the right? Bunch of things called dashboards. Yeah, interesting. All right, so what I think I would look to do is a couple of things. One, I would probably, just to tidy up my visualizations, come back in here and look for the columns that are over here on the left. Grab these guys and kind of maybe just reposition them over here in case my layout wasn't good. See what else I can learn. I'm also going to look into things like these bright green lines, which look like they're extending classes, because that's another bit of the diagonal coupling that we see. And when we drop that, it's a lot tighter, and it looks like, we've got some base classes that we might need to repeat across services if we were to push that over. The other big diagonal is the contains table. So kind of everything that we see in this layer of green flashing now, that's going to be all sitting in the same table or in the same schema, tables in the same schema. That's all fine. Kind of keep an eye on this one here. But yeah, it looks like there might be some authentication services that we might be able to break out. And maybe some reporting service that we break out. And that's the kind of stuff, as I'm beginning my scouting into a new application, that I'm going to look at over the course of my day. This was just a 5 or 10 minute kind of beginning of the exploration. We haven't moved anything around or used a non-standard view here, or really dug in too deeply. As you're taking those first couple of steps of analyzing an application, this is how I would go about it. I am looking for vertical stacks that might be able to be split out into a logical domain. So hopefully, collections here make sense as business objects. And I'm looking for areas that don't directly touch the data and would get to the data through something else. And that's where I'm going to start grouping things and looking for decoupling. So look for the vertical stacks, understand your big diagonal lines and your webs pretty well, and then start kind of looking at the code from there. I hope that's helpful, and good luck with your cloud migrations.